Maybe give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can, or a thumbs down if you can't. And we're going to get rocking and rolling. So the reason you're here today, right, is that we talked about the idea of how hard this job market is going to be for sellers going forward and today. And so we're going to talk about the top 5 resume and interview mistakes that you might be making and how to overcome them. But here's what I want to promise you, that if you stick around till the end, we're going to give you specific strategies and tactics that you can use to actually overcome those things and stand out, whether it's through submitting your resume in a certain way or whether or not it's how you go through and you actually interview within the process. Because I bet on that other side of the table, and I spend a lot of time interviewing sellers, sales managers, VPs, CROs in order to help them get the jobs that they are. So I've seen a lot of these mistakes being made directly across the table from me. So we're going to do that. If you've got a question, if you've got anything going on in your mind, please ping it in and we will actually talk about it as we go through this. With that being said, let's jump right into it. So first, what's going to happen today? So today you're going to learn what's really holding you back from landing your dream job. There's a difference to be said about whether or not you land a job or your dream job. Because what we know is the statistics say that sellers turn over about every 18 months, and there's a 30% turnover rate in sales on an annual basis. So that means most sellers and most sales managers and VPs are typically looking for a job at least once every 2 years. So we want to help you get into the job that you can stay in, because that's where the real money is made and the lives are experienced. So we're also going to talk about how to fix 5 common resume and interview mistakes that you're probably making, because we've seen them a lot. And then in addition to that, we'll discuss with you some strategies to stand out and finally secure the job that you deserve. And we'll do all of this in a pretty tight time frame, because I know time is of an essence. I promise you we'll be in and out of here in no more than 45 minutes, and it might be even a little bit faster than that. All right, so who is this webinar for? Let's talk about this real quick. I want you to know that if you're in the right place, because I don't want you to sit around, get halfway through this, and go, well, that was no good for me at all. So you're in the right place if you're a sales professional who feels stuck in your job search. If you're a sales professional who feels like you may end up looking for a new job sometime in the near future. If you're a driven individual who wants to stand out in a crowded job market, which will explain why sales is becoming even more and more crowded. Or if you're tired of just sending out resumes and not getting interviews. Or maybe you're tired of getting interviews, but not getting the second interview, which was a problem I went through when I was going back into the workforce after I owned my first business. Man, I'm usually that person who give me the first interview and I am going to absolutely get the second interview. I went through 5 first interviews back in 2013, 2014, and didn't get a single second interview. And I had to sit back and I had to try to understand what was happening and why that was occurring. And it was because I was making some of the same interview mistakes that we're going to talk to you about today. The other idea was just getting in the door, because I'll be honest with you, I look at probably 20 resumes a week and they all kind of look the same. And so we want to figure out a way that you can make things more applicable to the situation that you're trying to get into. And there's a few tests and things you can do. And we'll even talk about how you can use AI to do a better job of doing that. Now, who the heck am I? Well, you may have seen me. Most of the people who are coming to the webinar today came from our subscribers to Sales Fit Insider. So my name is Ken Lundeen, and I'm the president and founder of Get Sales Fit by Revheat. So Revheat I started in 2017, and we've been fortunate enough to work with over 60 companies. And with that, work with a lot of individual salespeople, VPs of sales, CROs, and CEOs. And so we are experts in sales training, coaching, and hiring. So much so that we actually have a program called the Sales Talent Acquisition Routine, where we teach companies how to go out and hire the best of the best. And we're going to take some of those secrets and give them to you so that you can use them on your job search. So we've helped more than 60 companies hire top talent, entered more than 500 salespeople personally. And our methodologies in sales have been responsible for more than $1 billion in sales with our teams, And we've had really cool stories of individual sellers who've gone from being on the performance improvement plan, the verge of actually being fired, to 3 years later selling more than $21 million and making $600,000 in annual compensation. So we know what it takes to go from stuck to getting unstuck. And so I want to talk you through and expose you to some of those things that most of the people aren't telling you today in ways that you can stand out in your job search and with your resumes and interviews. All right. So let's slow down for a second. I understand the pain that you're feeling because there are so many hidden career barriers. We just want a chance to do the right thing at the right company for the right amount of time. But it really generally turns into this just kind of, blase environment where we just keep hitting enter and send, and we're sending a lot of resumes out. Nobody's getting back to us. You're struggling to make a great impression in interviews, but it seems like the person you're interviewing with across Zoom isn't even interested in talking to you. And you keep doing the same thing over and over again, but you're not sure why the process isn't working, despite the fact that you're comfortable in your skills and your experience. You're comfortable that you're really good in what you do. You know that you can make an impact for the companies and the people that you could work for. But you just can't get the next opportunity that you're looking for. Now, let's understand, let's set the big picture. Because the big picture is this: the market is shifting. There are less sales jobs available today. Salesforce, Zoom, Microsoft have all come out, and they've said that the companies are not going back and hiring as many people as they once did. They're now more content with trying to rely with smaller sales teams who they put a bigger number on to perform. And so that means there's less jobs out there for you, which means there's also more competition. Employers are becoming substantially more particular, and you have to break through the noise. The market is shifting. Where it was 5 years ago, you could just throw your resume out there. Somebody'd pick you up. They'd pick you up and they'd probably give you a $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 raise. And you could have done that. I saw SDRs, the people just setting appointments, go through this process and go from $65,000 to $150,000 in base salary without any actual real skills or results or outcomes on their resumes or that they could speak to. That's shifting completely now. You're starting to see salaries compress. You're starting to see on-target earnings compress. And you're starting to see that this has turned into an environment where it's more employer-driven than employee-driven. The employer is starting to get control again. And so this means that there's a great opportunity for people who can break through the noise in order to get into a position that you can be successful. So without further ado, let's jump into it and let's talk about the specific mistakes that we see on a day-to-day basis. So first, the one-size-fits-all resume. It's a massive, massive problem because generic resumes blend in with the crowd. Hire managers can't differentiate between them. HR doesn't see them. And all they see is just this kind of blank page with the exact same words on it that the competitor that they just read had. And so you're literally not doing anything where you can stand out. So what do we do about this instead? Well, we need to create a targeted resume for each job application. Okay, I know that sounds scary because you're like, Ken, I'm sending 15 resumes a day. How can I do that? Well, the first thing I would tell you is this: don't send 15 because you're probably applying to positions that you really don't care about. And it's the same thing as if you're prospecting or doing anything else. You're going to have a much higher impact if you can send specific things, specifically tailored for that position, for that hiring manager, for that HR person to see. So I'm going to show you now how to use AI to do this. And I've got to switch my audio in order to do so you can hear it play. But this is pretty cool. We can use ChatGPT to really condense the time and the confusion between how we create a targeted resume for each job app and taking too long to do it. Because the truth is, when I looked at job ads, a lot of them look the same. So I was like, well, how do I make my resume more relevant? And so let's go ahead and see how we can do that using. So let's assume for a second that I take and I want to apply in an industry that I haven't historically served in. And so you've got my resume here, and let's say that I'm going for an executive level position around the sales world. So I've got my resume here, which had somebody help me write it, et cetera, and kind of make it cool. So we've got that, but we're like, okay, but what good's that going to do us when we have a job ad here that is very specific about what they're looking for? So they're looking for leveraged connections, strategic networking, proposal, right? And then it has down here, what are the knowledge and skills, the specific knowledge required, et cetera. So what I want to do then is I want to go ahead and use today's technology and tools to help me tell my story in a better way. And so what I've done here is I said, please rewrite my resume, which is attached, which we will do now, to fit it specifically with the job and the job description, which we get pulled from LinkedIn. And so what we've done there, we open this up and we simply say, all right, ChatGPT, go to work. So right now it's reviewing the web. It's looking at the core competencies. And it's rewriting it based upon the words and the description within that job. And so that's a really cool way that we can go kind of short and take a shortcut. So the real question becomes, though, is, hey, did it really do anything that mattered? And so let's just look real quick. Let's ask it that question. So you can see it's going through and it's highlighting, it's changing some of the words, updating, including things, remove some general skills. So this is one way that you can actually go about actually taking the time, which you can see this went very fast, for those jobs that you really, really want. So use AI to improve your presentation of your skill sets through your resume. So I hope that was something that was cool for everybody, because that's something that's not a lot of people are thinking about, because they're not thinking about how they can make their resumes more relevant, but spend less time doing it. And so that's a really good way to take, hey, here's my skill set, and then here's what they're asking for, and then combining it to use the correct words. And that was just a very quick case. We can get more specific than that if we need to. We can tell them, I want to use the key words and adjectives that are used to describe the type of person they're looking for in this job ad that are most likely to get me discovered and through their applicant tracking system. There's other things you can do to absolutely take that to the next level. Remember, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat or the Q&A, because I'd absolutely love to be able to talk to them for you. All right. So mistake 2, weak LinkedIn profiles. I mean, one of the things that we have to understand is LinkedIn in itself is one of the most powerful search engine entities on the planet. And so when somebody goes and they literally go to look up your name, if you have a LinkedIn profile, one of the very first things that's going to pop up on that page will be your LinkedIn profile. And then in addition to that, if you're a professional and you're applying through LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile is actually shipped with your resume. So we need to make sure that what our online presence looks like matches what it is that we're applying to do. So with that being said, that's even Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. I've heard of stories where people don't get the job because in the final reference check, they go look at their social media and it's not stuff that they would want representative of their company. So I would tell you, in a job search, if those things are going on, and you're, very personable in your stuff, and maybe you're a little opinionated or whatever it is, lock it down. You can put all that stuff so it's only your friends, only your followers, only your connections who can visit you and connect you. But LinkedIn is a really great way because it's often the first place that recruiters look to learn about you. So an incomplete or outdated profile can also hurt your chances. Think about if you're applying at a technology company or something else where you're expected to network and use technology, but you're not keeping up to date on the latest way that people can network and sell. Well, that becomes a struggle, right? And when they're looking for you, that becomes kind of that, there's a little red check mark against them. So we want to be clear. Here's what we need to do, though, is we need to create a strong and optimized LinkedIn presence. So what I'm going to do again is I've also recorded a little thing, and we're going to review probably 3 different LinkedIn profiles. I only know one of these people, and it'll be pretty obvious which one it is. But we're going to review 3 LinkedIn profiles, not because we're going to specifically dive into, oh, they have to do this thing better, but more because we're going to look at it and we're going to say, what are some areas that you can work on today? Because when I promised you at the top of the show was this, you're going to have strategies and tactics that you can leave with today to improve your opportunity to get the dream job that you're looking for. All righty, so let's go ahead and get moving. Press play again. All right, let's take a quick look at some different LinkedIn profiles and maybe some opportunities for improvement and some things that are going well. So I have 3 of them up here between, I believe it's Kanan, Haley, and then I have my own profile up here. So there's a few things we want to look at. So if I am a company or a hiring manager or a recruiter or HR, one of the first things I'm going to do is come to Mr. Smith's page, and I'm going to see he doesn't have a background. Well, that doesn't look like it's very complete. The other thing that we're going to look at is that he has 256 connections. You generally would like to see that above 500 because that's when LinkedIn stops really pointing it out. And so it shows that in sales, you're doing it. In addition, this is a selfie that was taken in the car, and with AI and the ability to use tools like Canva for free, we can actually remove that background to make it a nice looking headshot where it looks something like maybe Haley's background here, because whether that's a professional headshot or she used AI, we can see that it's clean. And then I can tell you the secret, my headshot that you'll see right here was actually a selfie, and it had a background, and we removed the background, and now look, I can use it just about anywhere that I want. So in addition to that, as we scroll through, we have a few other things going on. There's an about section that you can use in this area that neither Kanan or Haley use. And that about section, if you're in the job market, is a great area to actually kind of describe who you are, what you're about, and what makes you tick. I use it in my section so that clients and prospects will know what it is. So I'm talking to CEOs and VPs of sales, but I have this about section, which allows me to get more detailed about what it is so they can get to understand me. In addition to that, you'll see I get instant credibility because I use the headline so that the first thing they see is that 25,000 CEOs, sellers, and managers get weekly tips from me. Whereas you can see, and oftentimes with sellers, it's going to be something pretty straightforward like account executive at Permitflow. But sometimes we can create a little bit better profile by saying, hey, we help builders with SaaS solutions that help them reduce their total time to permits, et cetera. Just shows me that we're thinking about it. And then as we scroll down to the experience section, this is fine. The experiences are there. But it's a little less than even a resume because it doesn't tell me what really did you do as an account executive at Solient or as a market development manager at MarketSource, and what did you achieve? So let's see how Haley did. Yeah, so Haley, in her current role, has said, hey, here's what I do. Here's how I do it, right? And so what do we know as a hiring manager? Okay, leading permit application management software platform for builders. We know Haley's in SaaS. We know she's selling to B2B. We know that she's selling into a construction or contractor market. And those are things that I can say, how does that fit with a job posting that she may have applied to? And then you can look at kind of how I do it too, which is I'm going to take the use of the real estate. So I have a services section, a featured section, which also shows testimonials. That's because we have a premium plan, which is probably worth it if you start looking for a job. And then I say, okay, well, what do we do? What's the whole point? What's the why for each one of these companies? And then we make some controversial statements. So those are just some ideas on how you can spice up your LinkedIn to be more appropriate for the people. As you can see, it can be something pretty cool. You can use it to differentiate, and we can't like underwhelm a hiring manager, a CEO, or somebody because we're not paying attention to how they're going to view the world. This is very much like when you're selling and you need to be client centric. You need to be about your customers and your clients and what their problems and challenges are. So let's think about that. Let's say that you're applying somewhere, and whether it's a hiring manager or it's an HR manager, what's their biggest challenge? Well, one, they got to find qualified people to fill the role. What's their day to day challenge? It's a pain in the butt to figure out the difference between all y'all people. All y'all people. That's my Southern from being 16 years in Atlanta. But it's they're trying to figure it out. And so if we can make it easier for them by having a resume that's more well written, which we'll show you in a second, and then if we're having that idea of our LinkedIn presence being solid, and then we're customizing our resume so that it's easy to tell what our relevance is to their industry, we're making their job substantially easier and therefore increasing the likelihoods that we get to meet with them. So mistake 3 is an unclear value proposition during interviews. This is such a big deal. I interviewed 5 people this last week for one of our clients, and I can tell you this right now. There's a huge difference between the people who understand what they bring and how to communicate it and those who don't. Those who don't tend to think just because they were in a like role that they deserve credit for being in the like role. But you're not highlighting your unique strengths, the way that you actually speak to people. You're talking about what you do, not about what you did and why it mattered. And so this is something too, we probably don't spend enough time on it because I'm going to bet your company doesn't spend enough time on trying to help you validate and clarify what your actual value proposition should be just to your customers and clients. So you don't really have a good role model to think about this. And you need to start to think, how do I present myself where I can show the value that I'm going to bring to somebody else? And here's one of the big tricks. So put an asterisk next to this or write it down as we're talking about it. You have to be able to say how you did something in steps. How did you do it in steps? Because if I can talk to people about how I made something happen by doing this, then this, then this, don't you feel more comfortable that I'd be able to do it again for you? And that's what I run into all the time. It doesn't matter what level of the organization I'm helping interview for. They can't tell me their process. And that makes me very skeptical. Somebody could have the best run at the world, but they were at Microsoft. I often wonder if I was at Microsoft or Google. I saw another sales consultant, Kevin Gaither, say this, that if I was at Microsoft or Google, I wonder what my opener would be. Hey, how much money do you want to give me today? Because you got all the brand recognition in the world. But most of us aren't working at the Microsoft or the Google, and therefore we've got to do a better job of saying how we can do that. So what you need to be able to do is be able to master your personal value pitch. And you need to be able to spend the time being intentional about it. Mistake number 4. This may seem rudimentary to some of you, and others will be like, huh, that's a thing? Insufficient knowledge about the prospective company. And that's absurd. John Barrows was doing a thing on LinkedIn, and he said he actually took 20 sales calls. And he literally started every call and he said, hey, here's the deal. Hey, let's start this. Tell me a little bit about what you know about me, my company, and my potential challenges. 14 of the 20 walked in unprepared and had done no research on his company, how their products or services could benefit him, or what his potential problems could be. Now, if that's in a sales environment, while we're sitting here trying to sell something and make a commission, you think that number 16 or 18 out of 20 wouldn't do the research before they go to be interviewed? You have to understand it because unprepared candidates come across as uninterested. I've literally had people walk in and ask me questions about what the company does. And I'm that guy who says, well, clearly it wasn't important enough to do the homework. So I appreciate you applying, but we can part now. Right? What else? Research. It gives you the confidence to ask the right questions. Have you ever been in an interview and they're like, you have any questions? You're like, no, I'm good. You're not. You're not good because you have to be able to ask questions. Because if you know enough about the company, who they're targeting, what their products, their services are, what their market looks like, you should have questions where you're interviewing them back. It's not about just getting a job. It's about the two of you, the company and you, understanding how to get the right fit. So instead of that, we need to learn to ask insightful questions and align your answers. We have to be able to go to a company and say, hey, it looks like that you're selling SaaS products to travel agents. Do you find that that is more difficult to get their attention because they tend to mostly be 1099s, or do you only work selling it through the large corporates? Bad example off the cuff, but still, I think you see where I'm going. Right? In my previous job, we did this, this, and this. How do you handle that? Because you're selling into a similar industry, but it seems like you're selling into a slightly bigger company. What do you think the differences are? A little secret, and you can write this one down too. When I'm interviewing people, I'm looking for a particular trait. I want them to be able to be the student and the teacher in the same call. I want you to be naturally inquisitive, start curious and stay curious. And then when it's your moment to shine and we're talking about something that you're an expert at, teach me. Because that's what real sales in a consultative and strategic fashion actually looks like. So pay attention, learn to ask insightful questions, write some down as they work towards your previous work experience. It'll be enough to get you the next interview. Mistake 5, failing to demonstrate a results-oriented mindset. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is one where you're just talking about the tasks and the things that you do. Oh, we just did this on a day-to-day basis. No, 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 no. But what did you accomplish? And that's the real struggle with the turnover and the turning clock on sales being about every 18 months. Because what they really say is it's that 2 to 3 year time frame is where you actually start to see the real accomplishments. So accomplishments are not, I took 3 promotions where I was at each company for just 11 months. You might think it is. You got a higher paycheck, you got a higher OTE, but us hiring managers, that was just opportunistic. Because employers want proof that you can drive results. So listing the tasks can't showcase your input or impact, I should say. So we really want to make sure that we can demonstrate a results-oriented mindset. It goes back to what we had said earlier. If you can tell me a process and how that process yielded specific results, it's always going to show better. But that requires that you spend some time and figure out what your process is. My 22-year-old daughter just graduated college and she went to work for Lululemon. So many of you'll know, big athletic wear place. And they gave her some of the questions essentially. And there were questions like, well, how do you deal with conflict? She goes, well, I just told her to stop and told her to stop, in management positions in college. I said, okay, Riley, well, we got to think this through. How would you know to handle that again? And it wouldn't be just gut feel. What was the process you went through? Oh, well, the first thing was I started to ask questions from both parties as they were separated so I could understand where the gap was in the communication and so forth and so forth. And she was very intentional. And so she went in, she killed the interview and got offered the job. But slow down and understand why you do what you why, and you'll be levels above others. So make sure that you're highlighting your achievements in a results focused way. All right, the bonus mistakes, interviewing. Whew. This is a big one because let's just say, you got through it. Your LinkedIn profile didn't turn you away. Your resume was fine and it was data oriented. You got through it. but then you're in the interview. First, talking too much or too little. Now, if we don't have like a process, we don't understand how we get the results that we're trying to get, we'll often talk ourselves in circles to some extent in order to make the point we're trying to make. And what that looks like is, if somebody was counting the talk time between you and the person interviewing you, you're at like 75%. But what interviewers are looking for is clarity. They want you to be able to clearly articulate your answer. Because I can tell you the vast majority of the time I ask a question, truth is, I don't feel like they answered it. Second, another interview pitfall, not aligning your skills with the role. How did what you did before put you in a position to enable you to be successful in the position that you're applying for? So we have to align it. We want them to see us in the role. We want them to understand us. And we have to kind of draw that picture. It's like if you went to the park and they drew those characters, they can draw you in Italy, right? And you see the Leaning Tower of Pisa behind you or whatever. You see the Vatican. We want to be able to paint a picture that a hiring manager or somebody who's interviewing us can actually understand. Additionally, it's kind of a tangent to what we've already talked about some, but focusing on responsibilities instead of results. Oh, I was supposed to make cold calls. It was my job to take people and get discovery calls. Rather than, I would make 47 cold calls a day. I was highly targeted in those. Here's how I targeted those. And with that, I was able to set 5 appointments every single week. I took discovery calls. Well, in those discovery calls I took, they were actually qualification calls trying to determine if they needed to go into an opportunity. And I know that from the data that when I did those discovery calls, for every 2 of them I did, 1 of them turned into an opportunity. And then our average value of those opportunities was 100,000. So after so many, I could create X amount in pipeline. You've said your average value is this. I think the statistics would be the same. That would mean I'd need this many calls. How do you get the result? How do you get there? And then last is just that idea for getting to ask insightful questions. I had an interview just last week. I was interviewing somebody for a business development position in the defense industry. And this guy was fantastic because he came in there and he had me on my heels for the first 10 minutes as he was doing discovery. Lights out. Asked insightful questions, things that were meaningful, things that would matter. But remember, an interview, the best interviews are conversations. And I would also caution you about the following. If somebody's spending all their time selling you, not interviewing you, not making you uncomfortable, and they just keep telling you why their company is the best place to work, it might be. But you better be comfortable working without a lot of process. You better be comfortable that the company itself is probably winging it. Because one of the things I don't want to miss when we talk to people about interviewing, we talk to people about the job search is this. Most people know why they're leaving someplace, but they haven't really figured out what they're leaving for. Like, what do they want? What are we aspiring to be? What's the things, the must-haves, the needs in the next stop? And so we spend too much time focused on what we're running from instead of what we're running to. Because remember, the interview process is actually a two-way street. Companies just want you to think that they're in control. All righty. So let's talk about this real quick. What are some of the mistakes? We talked about poorly tailored resumes. You can go through and do that. One of the things I did skip, and I totally apologize, was you want your resumes to be data oriented. So wherever you can, put a result that was oriented. Don't say I made cold calls, right? Do what we had talked about just a minute ago. 47 cold calls a day yielded X number of calls, yielded this much opportunity. Show that you know how to do the thing and what the math looks like. So that's first. Second, don't handicap yourself with this weak LinkedIn or online presence. Third, make sure that you start to, what's your clear value in the interviews? So I had a guy who used to do some work for me named Josh, who's fantastic. And he was, for a moment there, he wanted to start his own lead gen agency. So he was doing outbound emails, lead gen, learned the whole process, the technology. It was awesome. Then decided he wanted to go to work in sales and he wanted to go work for a big company. So he had this unique way to actually present what his value was because he'd already had to work on 100% commission because he wasn't getting paid unless he generated a deal. He'd had to figure out the technology, he'd had to figure out the client propositions, and he understood the process. And so he could say, well, in my last position, I had to do these things and I had to be successful or I didn't eat. This is how I stepped through it. And this is how I think it'll apply directly for your company based upon what I know about your go-to-market motions in your industry. Needless to say, he got 2 job offers from 2 of the biggest companies in technology that were the first 2 he applied to. Because the other bonus that we didn't talk about was he actually hunted the hiring managers just like it was outbound email. He went after the hiring manager instead of going through the traditional places of HR. And the job he finally took, HR actually told him no until the hiring manager saw that Josh had gotten to him directly. And the hiring manager knew the value of somebody who could do that. What else? Lack of company knowledge. Go in prepped. Man, spend some time. If we're talking about applying companies that you really want to work at, understand it a little bit. There's a great site called RepVue, REPVUE. I think it's repvue.com. And it actually, what it is, it's a amalgamation. It's like a lot of reps will report, hey, did I make quota, did I not make quota, or whatever. And they have it on companies all throughout the world. And you can go in there and actually ask questions of other reps who are working in those companies. And one of the cool things that one does, it tells you what percentage of the reps in the company are actually making quota. Do you want to go work for a company where 22% are making quota? Or do you want to go to work for a company where 72% are making quota? So RepVue is a pretty cool one too. And then also, not showing a results-driven mindset. You've got to show that results-driven mindset because that's what they want to see, right? Let's be honest. Sales is still about making the number. You know, we started SalesFit because quite frankly, we want it to be more than that. We want you to be healthy, happy, healthier, wealthier, unstoppable. But we still have to produce. And it's one of the few places in the entire organization that's going to be measured on that pretty distinctively. So we've got to know that. Show a results-driven mindset. That's definitely something else. All right. Quick. So I did mention when you signed up, you might have seen it in the email, you might have seen it online, wherever it was, that for those of you who attended today, I think this is an awesome offer. If you're thinking about looking or gonna look in the next 6 months, or you're looking for something right now, I personally am more than happy to offer you an exclusive free resume review. It's for today's attendees only. If you're watching this on a webinar, doesn't work for y'all, or I'm sorry, if you're watching this on a replay webinar, not y'all, okay? It's the people who came today live. So for attendees only, if you want to sign up today, you can get a free personalized resume review. What that'll look like, send me an email at Ken@RevHeat, because SalesFit's a RevHeat company. Go Ken@RevHeat, just put resume review in the subject line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at your LinkedIn presence. I'm going to look at your resume. If you want to send me a potential job that you say, hey, this is the type of job I'd like to look at. And then what I'll do is I'll come back to you with a video and I'll review all those things so that you can see what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it and how you can make improvements to help your job search. So once again, it's normally $300 to do this. Just shoot me an email at Ken@RevHeat. And then in that, put resume review in the subject line. And the more detailed you can be about it, the more detailed I can be, getting you back things that'll be useful for you to use. So I'll leave it there, Ken@RevHeat.com. Okay. Lex, just, imagine what's possible, right? Knowing that you can walk in with confidence or that your resume and LinkedIn are exactly what hiring managers are looking for. And that you can land your dream job, moving your career forward. This is what I want for you. And this is what I hope for you. And the biggest thing I can tell you is we've got to take personal accountability for the whys. The competitive space for getting a really high quality job in sales is only getting more substantially competitive. And so you have got to lean in and do more. Just like in sales, the individual seller is the most important thing in a deal being closed, more so than the company itself. You, your efforts, the way you think about it, and your mindset are the most important things for you in landing your next job. And so I want you to understand that, because that's super important. There's going to be a survey that's going to pop up here in just 1 second that is going to ask you for, it's 6 questions. It'll take, 32 seconds tops. I'd love it if you'd fill it out. We'd just love to know how we did today. You have my email address, but I want you to know it's time to take charge of your career. You can kind of tell let's just empower you to do the right stuff. So don't let small mistakes hold you back. Do not worry about perfection. Worry about progress. Worry about consistency. Worry about effort. Start making that powerful presentation today. Whether you want to start by working on your resume or your LinkedIn presence or how you go to market and find the hiring managers, find one thing today. And just remember, as you've seen, because I would bet you probably subscribe to the SalesFit Insider newsletter. And if you don't, you should. You've got the power to shape your future. And I'm really excited that you might just let us along on the ride. So I appreciate you. If you'll stay around for just a second, fill out the survey at the end so we can make sure these are more powerful. Next week, actually, at this exact same time, we'll be doing a webinar on why New Year's resolutions fail and what you can do instead, which would be a great one to get you started to go into 2025. Absolutely rocking. So with that being said, my name's Ken Lundeen, president and founder of RevHeat and Get Sales Fit, and I appreciate you being here.